Thank you very much. So thank you to invite me here. I'm really glad to present you a part of my research. So I am Adeline Martinez and I come from Aix-Marseille University in France. Actually carry out a PhD in anthropology under the supervision of Jean-Marc de Grave. And I am specialized in population resettlement. I'm conducting my research in the province of Yogyakarta, in the upland of Merapi volcano. Mas Gilang mungkin next saja. Langsung ke judulnya. In my research, I try to describe and understand which patterns are structuring the relationship to environment and nature and territory in Javanese upland. Specifically, I try to understand the continuity of these patterns in the face of the change generated by the resettlement of a village. This village is a small village in the southern flank of the volcano. It is called Pembangunan. So my research approach, next. Yeah. My research approach is using classic anthropological methodological tools. That means spending long time living with people. So my first field work in this village was in 2012 for my master's degrees, and after that I came back in 2014 for more longer field work, and I spent more than 2 years studying this village. I learned local languages, Indonesian and Javanese. I interviewed people, making description of land use, economic and social activities, ritual practices, and people practices in general. So at terms, the purpose of my research is to offer a complete and dynamic monography of this village, not only by giving a static description of local cultural practices, but more by highlighting the way that this village is evolving in relationship with the contemporary world. Next. So let's see, maybe everyone knows where is the Merapi volcano, but I will give some specific information. Next one. Yeah. So Merapi volcano is located on the Ring of Fire, as you see in the island of Java. At almost 3,000 meters above the sea level, it is considered as permanently active. The volcano stands at 30 kilometers from the city of Yogyakarta, the capital city of the eponym province. In the region, population density is quite high, with 7,000 inhabitants per kilometer square in the city, and around 1,000 inhabitants per kilometer square in the rural areas of Merapi. Next. This is so you can see Yogyakarta here and the Merapi in the center of Central Java. Yeah. So there is two main hazards related to the Merapi volcano. The first one is pyroclastic flow, or nuée ardente in French. In Indonesian, this awan panas, and in Javanese, wedus gembel. This kind of flow, this is a flow of high temperature volcanic rocks, ashes, and gases. And a nuée ardente can go down the flank of the volcano at the speed of 300 km per hour. So it was one of these phenomena who destroyed the village of Pembangunan. The second main hazard are lahar. Lahar comes from the Indonesian word lahar. And this is a flow of volcanic debris. Especially during rain season, flowing water carries volcanic debris along the valley. And this kind of flow can destroy everything on its path. So here you have a dam after the path of the oleh. Next one. Thank you. So here you have the history of major eruption in the Merapi volcano since it started to be recorded by human. Next. Okay. So now I will present the 2010 eruption. So in October-November 2010, a big major eruption affected the center of the island. And during more than 10 days, Merapi volcano spewed its pyroclastic flow on the southern flank of the volcano, threatening the city of Yogyakarta. Dozens of villages are affected or totally destroyed and buried under volcanic material. 10,000 of people are forced to evacuate their home. Next one. So after the disaster, the opportunity emerged for the victim to be supported by the government to rebuild their home. An international aid fund called Java Reconstruction Fund is specially released for the implementation of this program. This program provides, in addition to reconstruction of the village, the resettlement, in Indonesian relokasi, of people who live in the prone disaster area. Consequently, this aid program for victims of the disaster, called Recompact, takes place within the wider context of a risk management policy. So, to better understand this plan, I need to explain this map. The purpose of this risk management plan is to clear the so-called at-risk area from human dwellings and infrastructures. So the identification of this zone is based on cartography of volcanic hazard. The government, through the Pusat Vulkanologi dan Mitigasi Bencana Geologi, had established risk mark around the volcano according the degree of vulnerability of this area to volcanic hazard. This zoning technique of hazard is based on the eruptive history of the past event and is regularly updated at each new eruption. So now currently there is 3 zones, numbered from 1 to 3. The zone called KRB3, this means Kawasan Rawan Bencana 3, or red zone, draw a circle of 5 kilometers around the crater. So this is in red. So according to national regulation, all permanent drilling are totally prohibited in this area. But this prohibition, which exists since the 40s, do not prevent some villagers to remain living and having activities in the KRB3. Moreover, this area has been inhabited for more than 1 century. My latest research estimates the foundation of some village in this at-risk area in the early 19th century. Next one. So, under the name of Recompact, this program, created after the 2010 eruption, is not just a reconstruction and resettlement project, but this is a program for victims of disaster. That means that Recompact supports the necessity to generate new incomes for post-disaster recovery and development of local community. In order to restoring livelihood, this project propose some funding and technical assistance for production and market activities. In the same vein, regional government provides the purchase of one dairy cow per family. So in this program, development is seen as a corollary of a good risk management policy, as explained in the regulation concerning disaster management. So here, this is the national law about disaster. Yeah. So we will see the implementation of disaster management policy in accordance to national development policy and vice versa. One. So in this communication, and by analyzing the consequences of the resettlement of Pelem-Sari village, I want to show how the current risk management policy in Merapi is producing some contradiction and paradoxes between, one, the necessity of recovery and development after disaster, and on the other hand, the volcanic risk mitigation. So for that, I will take the example of Pelem-Sari hamlet, the target village of my fieldwork. Next one. So Pelem-Sari is a hamlet in Indonesian, the dusun, of 81 households or 4 neighborhoods. It was originally one of the highest villages on the volcano. As many hamlets in the island of the southern flank of the volcano, it has been completely destroyed during the last eruption. No house or building are resist to the nuée ardente, to the awan panas. At the end of 2012, so 2 years after the eruption, villagers of Pelem-Sari who took part in the resettlement program Recompact moved into their new village. The new village is called Untap. It means Union Tetap, or permanent drilling. See, this new settlement is located about 5 kilometers away from the former village, outside the at-risk area. And since this time, people began to rebuild their life in this new place of residence. So the new village is located on a piece of land of 30,000 meters square. Each family receives one house of 36 meters square on a 100 meter square plot of land. In comparison with the 40 hectares of the former village territory, it's about 2 hectares per family. The resettlement site is really small to maintain and too small to maintain economic activities. So therefore, after the resettlement, the former village territory became essential in the life of Pelem-Sari people in order to collect incomes and to restore their lives after the disaster. This necessity involves a restructuration of territory patterns, which can be explained by the analysis of 2 main socio-economic activities in the village. The first one is touristic activity, and the second one is husbandry-related activity. So after the eruption, touristic activities were intensified with the creation of a community-based tourism in and around the territory of Pelem-Sari. This community is called Merapi Volcano Tour. Touristic activity then rapidly became a real opportunity for the victim of the eruption by offering new source of income. Started just few years after the eruption, this disaster tourism took an institutional form and nowadays still remains one of the main activities in the region. Located in the Pembangunan territory, in the prone disaster area. The Volcano Tour organization, created by local people, offered to them the opportunity to get income by guiding, renting motorbike, proposing jeep trip, and creating small shop. Besides these tourism-related activities, villagers are still allowed to exploit their private land in the prone disaster area. For example, for volcanic sand mining, they can sell it. But the main activity on this land that they used to call garden, kebon in Javanese, is related to cattle breeding. As a recovery and development program, beside the resettlement of the village, the government financed the purchase of one dairy cow per family. But to feed the cattle, which is penned in a coach located in the new settlement, villagers have to collect grass every day. So most of the land located in the former village are looked after and used for this purpose. Moreover, people of Pembangunan, like in the past, continue to exploit the forest around the village to collect wood and grass. It's particularly important when, during the dry season, the grass in the garden become really rare. A traditional customary law, that means local oral rules, is organizing this activity in the forest. So finally, Pembangunan villagers have socio-economic activity which are extremely depending on the upland of the volcano. Garden and forest can be easily exploited, and the tourism-related activity offer complementary income. Therefore, after the resettlement, the restructuration of territory pattern was inevitable. The new village, the UNTAP, became the place of residence, and the former village, the place of socio-economic activity. Before the eruption, the 2010 eruption, there was no distinction between both. It means that the place of residence was to also the place of socio-economic activities. Next one. So here I create a map to explain this restructuration of territory patterns. So in yellow you can see this is the former village of Kinarejo. In brown, this is the so-called at-risk area, the prone disaster area. And we can see it's very small because of the size of the land, but Pembangunan, the UNTAP is just out this zone. And in red, you have the daily commute of people to collect grass. So every day they collect grass on the upland and come back to feed the cattle. And in blue, this is the daily commute to participate to touristic activities. Next one. So this is an example of the daily commute between the new and the former village, between the north and the south of the mountain. So people who have already collected grass go down and go home to feed his cattle. Okay. So my observations about the everyday life of Pembangunan villager after the resettlement make me conclude that the resettlement plan has removed drillings from the red zone, the prone disaster area, but it still remains anthropic activities in this area. And this restructuration of territory pattern is both the consequences of the resettlement plan and the condition sine qua non for of the recovery and the development of the village. So now let's see some issue and limit which can appear in this situation. So this situation raises several contradictions between, on one hand, the goal of the risk management policy, and on the other hand, the recovery and development objective of the resettlement policy. In addition, this contradiction have repercussion on legal tools. So this table summarizes these paradoxes. So first, local development is possible because people still have property rights on their land located in the red zone, and because it's still legal to maintain and to have activities in the former village territory. We saw in the previous section how the income and socio-economic activity of the villager remain highly dependent of the upland territory. Also, it seems impossible to completely clear the risk area without jeopardizing the standard of living of the people. Life and sustainability of livelihood of people currently depend of the interaction with a specific space, it means with the at-risk zone. A second paradox appears when we considering the legal translation of these goals. The current regulation maintains private property rights on land and permit agricultural and touristic activity. However, it prohibits the establishment and maintenance of infrastructure like road, electricity, water. One of the major consequences of this legislative duality is the quality of the road network in the at-risk area. Indeed, because of the legal prohibition of maintaining any infrastructure in the KRB3, the quality of the road network has been deteriorated over the years. Road network is important for local people for two main reasons. Firstly, roads are central to access to the at-risk area and so to maintain income-generating activities. And secondly, in terms of risk management, these roads are the roads who provide way for evacuation in case of eruption. Moreover, the problem of the road network quality is becoming more and more important because of the touristic activities. Indeed, hundreds of people are visiting this area during weekend and holidays. In case of emergency evacuation, the quality of the road will be one of the most important factors to guarantee a rapid response and evacuation. So, I think that these contradictions are the expression of tension between the risk mitigation policy and the development purpose after the disaster. They are the result of compromises between these two aspects after 2010. In this perspective, the restructuration of the territory pattern after the resettlement of the village can also be seen as a negotiated expression of this tension, as an expression of the contradiction and the diverging or converging interest which shape and mold a specific space. Taking the theory of regional politic ecology, Dove and an anthropologist from UGM speak about a contradictory landscape or schizophrenic landscape to describe this kind of contradiction. The territorial dynamics are explained by the overlapping of different social logic, from the state logic to the local logic. So now we still can understand this paradox and try to go out from this contradiction. At the representational level, This social logic go hand in hand with the way of conceptualizing space and volcanic environments. This contradiction, raised by the analysis of the consequence of the risk management policy, can be highlighted and clarified by the analysis of risk definition and conception. The description and analysis presented earlier already give some information to understand the differences between the two way of seeing volcanic risk. On the one hand, there are the representation who organize the thinking and action of the state institution agent and scientists working in partnership or within government agency. And on the other hand, we have the representation carried by the plumbsary inhabitant. So the separation into social category has an heuristic value for analysis, but in practice there are so many links and exchange between the two groups. But this is in this space of exchange that people build different perspectives about a same object. This is why I think it is interesting to describe it. So, as outlined in this table, we can describe the differences between both representation by considering 4 main points: temporal dimension, spatial dimension, what is volcanic risk, and how is seen the prone disaster area. So the first difference appears when we consider the temporal relationship to Merapi volcano. Indeed, for the institutions and scientists, the eruption or the occurrence of a lava is the organizing core of thinking and action. Everything, every action, every thinking here is organized to prevent and anticipate a volcanic eruption. So it is because the two main missions of this institution are to maintain the safety of the people, and secondly, to understand the phenomenon and its consequence. The volcanoes tend more with the ritual, social, economic activity. A routine is created in relationship to volcanic environment, mainly based on the cycle of season, dry season, wet season. Also, if previous eruption appear as temporal rupture within the in the local representation, they are not the keystone which organize all daily social practices. A second difference is also reflected in the spatial dimension. For governmental agency and scientists, the volcano is a geophysical and geographical entity, an outdoor materiality, a remote and impersonal object. It is especially visible in the significance of the use of map and graphic representation of the volcano in the daily practice of agents. For them, the prone disaster area is an area drawn on a map with boundaries defined by geophysical and geographical parameters and by the statistic of the probability of the meeting between a specific hazard and human drilling and infrastructure. For villagers, the Merapi is like a home. We can hear some people say, Merapi homaku. It means in Javanese, Merapi is my home. It's more related to identity. A third difference appears when we take in consideration the representation and the inclusion of the volcanic risk in the practice of this true group. For for the government agency or people working there, the volcanic risk is the only risk taken into account for the development of policy and decision making. It's particularly true when we consider the creation of volcanic map. For the villager, the volcanic risk represents just one risk among many others that could affect their lives, like the socio-economic risk of being displaced by the government, or the risk of social dislocation, or the fear of loss of social identity. For the villager, the volcano is a place of residence, a living space, and especially a part of the local social identity. This social dimension, as associated with volcanic environment, is built by everyday practice in relationship with the prone disaster area. For the villager, the red zone is a part of their territory, their home. It means that territories means that it is a place invested by meaning and practices, a space that provide economic and social resources, a space defined by the set of social relations, a specific form of sociability and strong social networks. This is the last difference with the institution and sciences, for whom Merapi still remains an impersonal area. So all this representation related to Merapi volcano are involved in the building of two visions of the same reality. So for the government, people work for the government in this agency. Volcano especially appears in its potential of destruction and damage. This geophysical entity is the source of human, material, and financial loss. And for the villager, even if they are aware of the possibility of disaster, because their home have been totally destroyed in 2010, the volcano is more considered in relation to the viability of the territory. That means that the focus is on the renewal capacity of human and material resources of the territory and volcanic environment. So this is why the first will then speak about the Merapi or represent the Merapi as dangerous, tidak aman, berbahaya, while the latter see it more as comfortable, pleasant space to live, nyaman. Finally, we had to face with two ways of conceiving space and risk, and the risk related to. Some consider Merapi as an at-risk zone, the other more like a living space. And I will say that if some people consider that Pelomsari villagers have a misperception of volcanic hazard, I can say that governmental agencies have a misperception of territory. The current risk management policy relies solely on the calculating natural risk and underestimating the importance of all social relations and practice involved in the construction and reconstruction of the territory. This unidirectional approach of the risk factor causes the emergence of paradox and contradiction. It creates incompatibility between the risk management policy and the necessity of recovery and development. So I think that to develop this policy, we need to focus to build a more harmonious disaster management plan, we need to integrate or to make a real holistic development land development policy. It's mean two things. Taking into account other factors than natural risk, because it's very important on the construction of territory patterns, and adapt policy and legal tools to the everyday practice of people. This would combine both the consideration of natural hazard and the integration of organization and local socio-economic structures to create policy where risk management and development goals would not be in contradiction. Thank you very much.